My name's Derek Thompson, and for 12 years, I believed I was married to my best friend Jessica. Had this way of making even mundane Tuesday mornings feel like adventures. She'd dance around our kitchen in her business clothes, singing off key to classic rock while making coffee, and I'd think, this is it, this is what happiness looks like. I should have realized something was wrong when the dancing stopped. We met in college. I was studying architecture. She was majoring in communications with dreams of conquering the advertising world. Back then, Jessica wore vintage band t-shirts and had this infectious laugh that could fill entire rooms. She was ambitious but grounded-driven, but still made time for midnight pizza runs and weekend road trips to nowhere special. "You're going to design buildings that last forever," she told me, during one of those late-night conversations that define young love. "I'm going to create campaigns that people remember for 5 minutes." We balance each other out. I thought we always would. After graduation, Jessica landed an entry-level position at Vertex Communications, one of Chicago's most competitive advertising firms. I started at a small architectural firm, designing strip malls and office buildings, while dreaming of skyscrapers. We were broke happy and absolutely certain we could conquer the world together. Those early years were golden. Jessica would come home exhausted but excited, full of stories about difficult clients and office politics. She'd curl up against me on our secondhand couch, complaining about her demanding boss, while I massaged her shoulders and listened to every detail. "I'm going to run that place someday," she'd declare, and I believed her completely. As Jessica climbed the corporate ladder, our lives gradually changed. The vintage t-shirts were replaced by designer blazers. The midnight pizza runs became client dinners I wasn't invited to. The road trips disappeared entirely, replaced by work conferences and mandatory company retreats. "It's temporary," Jessica assured me whenever I mentioned feeling disconnected. "Once I make senior, our strategist, things will calm down. We'll have time for us again." But success, I learned, has a way of demanding more success. Each promotion brought longer hours, more travel, and an expanding circle of colleagues who seemed to occupy increasingly larger portions of Jessica's attention and conversation. The first crack in my willful blindness appeared 3 years ago during Vertex summer company picnic. Jessica had been working on a major campaign for a pharmaceutical company, pulling 16-hour days and coming home too exhausted to do anything but collapse into bed. At the picnic, I watched her transform. The moment we arrived at Millennium Park, Jessica became someone I barely recognized, vivacious, magnetic, working the crowd like a seasoned politician. She remembered everyone's names, asked about their families, and laughed at jokes that weren't particularly funny. That's when I first noticed Reid. He was everything. I wasn't tall, broad-shouldered, with a kind of effortless confidence that made everyone around him seem slightly diminished. Harvard MBA, family connections, the golden boy who'd been fast-tracked through every position he'd ever held. He had this way of commanding attention without seeming to try, like gravity bent differently in his presence. I watched him approach Jessica during the softball game, offering coaching tips that required him to stand very close behind her, his hands guiding her swing. They laughed together like old friends, though I'd never heard her mention his name before. "Who's the guy with Jessica?" I asked. "Tom Bradley, one of Jessica's colleagues I'd met at previous events. Reid Sr., creative director, real hotshot. Some say he's being groomed for partner." Tom glanced at me curiously. "Jessica hasn't mentioned him. They've been working together a lot lately." Working together? Such innocent words. For such dangerous territory, I started paying closer attention. After that, Jessica began mentioning Nathan in conversations. Casually at first, then with increasing frequency. "Nathan thinks the Morrison campaign needs a different approach. Nathan suggested this great restaurant for client dinners. Nathan has such innovative ideas about market positioning. Always. Nathan always delivered with a brightness in her voice that I hadn't heard when she talked about me in years. The changes were subtle at first. Jessica started working later, claiming Her new projects required more strategic thinking. She bought new clothes, sophisticated, expensive pieces that transformed her from the quirky creative I'd married into someone who looked like she belonged in boardrooms and exclusive clubs. "You look incredible," I told her one morning as she checked herself in our bedroom mirror before leaving for work. "Thank you, important presentation today with Nathan." She paused, lipstick halfway to her mouth, among others. Yes, there was always an important presentation, an urgent client, meeting, a strategic planning session that couldn't wait. Jessica's schedule became an elaborate fiction designed to keep me at arm's length, while she built whatever was happening with Nathan. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in October. We'd planned to celebrate our anniversary 11 years together, and I'd made reservations at the restaurant where we'd had our first real date. I'd even left work early to buy flowers and her favorite wine. Jessica called at 6:30. "Derek, I'm so sorry, but this client meeting is running incredibly late. You know how these things go." "Our anniversary dinner," I said, staring at the flowers on our kitchen counter. Silence stretched across the phone line. "Oh God, Derek, I completely forgot. We're in the middle of crisis management." For the Morrison account, I hung up without saying goodbye. The first time I'd ever done that in our entire relationship. At midnight, Jessica finally came home. Her hair was mussed, her makeup completely gone, and she smelled like wine and expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "Derek, are you awake?" I pretended to be asleep, listening as she moved around our bedroom with unusual care, as if trying not to disturb evidence of her deception. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen making coffee with forced cheerfulness. "I'm so sorry about last night," she said without meeting my eyes. "The Morrison situation was a complete disaster. Nathan and I were putting out fires until almost 11. Where was this crisis meeting? Different locations. We had to chase down executives all over the city." She turned to face me with a bright, practiced smile. "But we saved the account. Nathan said my quick thinking was what made the difference." Nathan said. Nathan thought Nathan believed. That's when I realized I was no longer married to Jessica. I was married to Nathan's admirer. I decided to stop playing the oblivious husband. The transformation didn't happen overnight. For weeks I watched and listened, collecting small pieces of evidence, like an archaeologist reconstructing a civilization from fragments. Jessica had started using a new perfume, something sophisticated and musky that she definitely hadn't been wearing for my benefit. Her phone was now perpetually password protected and never left her side, even when she showered. She'd begun buying lingerie under the guise of treating herself after successful project completions. More telling were the changes in her behavior toward me. The casual touches disappeared. The inside jokes stopped. The way she used to seek my opinion on everything from client presentations to what to have for dinner gradually faded till I realized she hadn't asked me for advice about anything substantial in months. "You seem distant lately," I mentioned one evening as we ate takeout. Thai food in unusual silence. Just work stress. This Nathan collaboration is consuming my life. Collaboration, what a perfectly clinical word for an affair. I spent sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, wondering when I'd become scenery in my own marriage. Jessica would lie beside me occasionally, smiling at her phone, in the dark, typing messages to someone who clearly mattered more than the man she'd promised to love forever. That's when I called Miguel Santos. Miguel and I had been college roommates before he dropped out to join the military. Now, he ran a small private investigation firm that specialized in discreet information gathering for individuals and small businesses. He'd offered his services half-jokingly at our wedding. Never thought I'd actually need them. I told him over drinks at a dive bar on the south side. "Are you absolutely sure you want to go down this road?" Miguel asked, his weathered face. "Serious. Some truths can't be unknown once you learn them. The not knowing is killing me faster than the truth ever could." Miguel nodded slowly. "What exactly do you want to find out?" "Everything I need to understand what I'm lie dealing with." Within a week, Miguel had installed discreet tracking software on Jessica's car and laptop. Nothing invasive, he assured me, just location data, call logs, and basic usage patterns. Enough to establish whether my suspicions were paranoia or horrifying reality. The reality was worse than I'd imagined. Jessica wasn't just having an affair. She was living a completely separate life. The late strategy sessions were romantic dinners at upscale restaurants I couldn't afford. The weekend client retreats were intimate getaways to bed and breakfasts in Wisconsin. The emergency presentations were long afternoons at a luxury apartment in Gold Coast that definitely wasn't either of their offices. Miguel presented his findings with military precision GPS logs showing regular visits to the same locations. Credit card records revealing charges for expensive hotels and restaurants, and photographs that shattered what remained of my illusions. Jessica and Nathan walking hand in hand along Lake Michigan. Jessica and Nathan sharing an intimate dinner at a restaurant that had a 6-month waiting list. Jessica and Nathan entering that Gold Coast apartment building like they lived there together. They've been renting this place for about 4 months, Miguel explained, sliding a lease agreement across the table. Both their names are on it. They're not even trying to hide it from anyone, except you and his wife. His wife, Dr. Sarah Reid, cardiac surgeon at Northwestern Memorial. 2 kids, busy practice. She has no idea what her husband's doing with his free time. I stared at the photographs, feeling strangely detached from my own betrayal. This woman who looked exactly like my wife, laughing and kissing another man, felt like a stranger. "What's your next move?" Miguel asked. I'd been thinking about that question obsessively. The conventional approach would be confrontation, demand, explanations, fight for the marriage, try to work through the betrayal. The mature approach would be quiet, divorce proceedings, division of Tia's civilized separation. Neither option satisfied me. I want them to understand what public humiliation feels like. I said, finally. Careful, Derek revenge has a way of consuming the people who pursue it. This isn't revenge. It's truth-telling. Over the next month, I became someone I didn't recognize. Methodical, calculating patient in ways that surprised even me. I studied Jessica and Nathan like an architect studying a building, looking for structural weaknesses and stress points. I learned that Nathan was married to a woman who worked 12-hour days and trusted him completely. I discovered that Jessica had been taking credit for collaborative projects, positioning herself as the creative force behind campaigns that were actually Nathan's ideas. I found out that they were planning to leave Vertex together and start their own agency using client contacts and proprietary strategies they developed while employed there. Most importantly, I learned they were planning to disappear from their current lives at Excel, still the same time. That's when I conceived my plan. Vertex's annual awards gala was 8 weeks away. The entire staff, plus spouses and major clients, would gather at the Art Institute of Chicago for an evening of recognition and networking. Jessica had mentioned it casually, noting that she'd be presenting an award herself. "You should come," she'd said, not quite meeting my eyes. It would mean a lot to me. Of course it would. What better way to maintain appearances than having the beautiful husband in attendance, while she flirted with her lover in public? I began preparing with the same attention to detail I brought to my architectural projects. I researched the venue, studied the guest list Jessica had left on her laptop, and created a comprehensive plan for the evening's presentation. Miguel helped me acquire professional-grade equipment cameras, disguised as everyday objects, audio recording devices, smaller than buttons, and a wireless presentation system that could override the venue's audio-visual setup. "You're going to elaborate lengths," Miguel observed as we tested the equipment in his office. "Are you sure this is what you want?" They made their choice when they decided I didn't deserve honesty. I'm just making sure everyone understands what that choice really looks like. The weeks leading up to the gala were surreal. Jessica became increasingly excited about the event, spending hours shopping. for the perfect dress, getting her hair styled by an expensive salon, and generally behaving like someone preparing for the most important night of her life. "I can't wait for you to see the presentation," she told me, while modeling potential jewelry combinations. "Nathan and I have put together something really special." "I'm sure you have," I thought, adjusting the hidden camera in my cufflink. 2 nights before the gala, I had dinner with Sarah Reid. I'd approached her carefully, reaching out through professional channels with a request to discuss a matter of mutual concern. She'd agreed to meet at a quiet restaurant near the hospital, probably expecting some business proposition. "Mr. Thompson," she said, shaking my hand with a surgeon's firm grip, "I'm curious about this mutual concern you mentioned." I pulled out a tablet and showed her one of Miguel's photographs, Nathan and Jessica entering their secret apartment. Sarah stared at the image for a long moment, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to cold, analytical fury. "How long?" she asked, simply. "At least 6 months, probably longer. And you have proof I showed her everything. The location data, the credit card records, the photographs, spanning months of deception." Sarah examined each piece of evidence with clinical precision, occasionally asking questions that revealed she'd been sensing something wrong, but hadn't connected the dots. "What do you plan to do with this information?" she asked finally. "That depends. Are you interested in collaboration?" Sarah's smile was sharp enough to perform surgery. "Dr. Reid, collaboration is my specialty." We spent the next 2 hours planning. Sarah had noticed changes in Nathan's behavior. The unexplained absences, the new clothes, the way he'd started treating their marriage like a business arrangement that no longer required his full attention. She'd also discovered financial irregularities that made more sense in light of his secret apartment and expensive dates. "Nathan thinks I'm too buried in my work to notice what he's doing," Sarah said as we prepared to leave. "He's about to learn how wrong he is." The night of the gala arrived with perfect clarity. Jessica spent hours getting ready, transforming herself into someone who belonged in magazines. She wore a black dress I'd never seen before, something that emphasized every curve and made her look like she was attending her own coronation. "You look incredible," I told her, meaning it completely. "Thank you. This is such an important night." She kissed my cheek, leaving a perfect lipstick impression. "Nathan says the presentation could change everything for both of us. No doubt it will." I thought, checking the recording device hidden in my watch. The Art Institute had been transformed for the evening. The contemporary wing served as the main venue, with modern art, providing an ironically perfect backdrop for what was about to unfold. The guest list included every significant player in Chicago's advertising world, plus clients and potential partners worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Jessica immediately found Nathan's gravitational pull, drifting toward it. I'm like a planet settling into orbit. I positioned myself at the bar, nursing a scotch, and watching their performance unfold. They thought they were being discreet, but their chemistry was obvious to anyone paying attention. The way Nathan's hand lingered on Jessica's back when he introduced her to clients. How she laughed at his jokes with a brightness I hadn't seen in years. The way they moved around the room like a couple who'd been together forever, while their actual spouses remained carefully positioned at the periphery. I played my role perfectly, the supportive husband making small talk with Jessica's colleagues, asking polite questions about their work, and gradually positioning myself for the evening's climax. "You must be Derek," someone said behind me. I turned to find Sarah Reid, elegant in navy blue and radiating the kind of contained energy that comes from making life-or-death decisions daily. "Dr. Reid, you look lovely, thank you. Interesting venue, isn't it? So many beautiful pieces on disp." Lay. Her eyes found Nathan and Jessica across the room. Though I suspect the most fascinating exhibition hasn't started yet. The cocktail hour stretched into dinner, a formal affair with assigned seating that placed Jessica and Nathan at the head table with Vertex's senior partners. I was seated with other spouses and lesser employees exactly where Jessica expected me to be. The main course was interrupted by the evening's program. Various executives took turns at the podium, presenting awards and recognizing achievements. Jessica was scheduled to present the Creative Excellence Award, an irony that wasn't lost on me. When her name was announced, Jessica glided to the stage with practice grace. She wore confidence like a second skin, her voice carrying easily across the room as she spoke about innovation, collaboration, and the importance of creative partnerships. This year's recipient, she announced, represents everything our industry should aspire to: vision, dedication, and the courage to pursue bold ideas. As she opened the envelope with theatrical flair, Nathan Reid. The applause was thunderous. Nathan rose from his seat, his smile radiating triumph, as he made his way to the stage. Jessica kissed his cheek as she handed him the award, a gesture that lasted just a second too long to be purely professional. Nathan's acceptance speech was everything I'd expected: humble, gracious, and full of references to the collaborative spirit that made excellence possible. He thanked his team, his mentors, and especially Jessica Thompson, whose creative vision has inspired me to reach new heights. They stood together at the podium basking in applause and admiration, two people who'd convinced themselves they deserved their stolen happiness. That's when I made my move. As Nathan and Jessica returned to their seats, I approached the podium. The event coordinator looked confused. I wasn't on the program, but I quietly explained that I had a special presentation honoring the evening's theme of collaboration, ladies and gentlemen. I announced into the microphone, "If I could have your attention for just one more moment." The room settled into expectant silence. Jessica looked puzzled but pleased, probably assuming I was about to deliver some heartfelt tribute to her professional achievements. As someone who has had the unique privilege of observing true collaboration up close, I wanted to share some insights about what dedication really looks like. I clicked a small remote hidden in my palm. Behind me, the large projection screen descended from the ceiling, the same screen that had been showcasing award winners all evening. The first thing you notice about genuine partners is their commitment to spending time together regardless of circumstances. The first photograph filled the screen: Jessica and Nathan holding hands on Navy Pier, taken just 2 weeks earlier during one of Jessica's supposed client meetings. The room fell dead silent. True collaboration requires sacrifice. I continued advancing to the next image: Nathan and Jess, Ika kissing in the parking garage at Vertex. It demands complete dedication to shared goals. Jessica had turned white as porcelain, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Nathan looked like he'd been struck by lightning, his award forgotten on the table. The most impressive aspect of their partnership, I said, clicking to bank records showing unauthorized expense account usage, is how seamlessly they've blended personal and professional interests. The screen filled with hotel receipts, restaurant charges, and rental agreements, all documenting months of deception, funded by corporate accounts and personal credit cards. But perhaps the most touching element, I announced, advancing to email exchanges between Jessica and headhunters, is their shared vision for the future. Text messages flashed across the screen. "Can't wait to finally be together properly. Once we secure the Morrison account, we can make our move. Derek will never see it coming." The room erupted. Clients pushed back from tables demanding explanation. A nation's Vertex executives huddled an emergency conference. The carefully orchestrated evening dissolved into chaos. But I wasn't finished. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice cutting through the noise, "I present to you the Real Creative Excellence Award, a masterclass in deception, featuring proprietary client information, shared with competitors, and systematic theft of company resources." The final slides contain the most damaging evidence: Nathan's communications with rival firms, offering to share Vertex's strategic plans in exchange for funding their new venture email exchanges, showing Jessica's role in leaking campaign details. To competitors, Jessica finally found her voice. "Derek, stop this. You're destroying everything." "Actually," I replied calmly, "I'm just revealing what you've already destroyed." Nathan lunged toward the stage, his face purple with rage, but security was already moving. "You son of a..." This is defamation. Is it defamation when it's true? I asked, clicking to a video recording I'd made just that afternoon, Nathan and Jessica in their secret apartment, discussing their plans to disappear to San Francisco with their clients following Vertex's collapse. Sarah Reid rose from her seat, her voice carrying with surgical precision. For those questioning the authenticity of this presentation, I'm Dr. Sarah Reid, Nathan's wife, Mr. Thompson, and I've spent considerable time verifying every piece of evidence you're seeing tonight. She held up a thick folder. We also have financial records showing systematic theft, falsified expense reports, and substantial evidence of professional misconduct spanning 8 months. The chaos reached a crescendo. Nathan was shouting denials while being restrained by security. Jessica sat frozen in her chair as colleagues who'd applauded her moments earlier now whispered behind their hands. Clients were demanding immediate meetings with Vertex executives. But the most beautiful moment came when James Morrison, Jessica's Aegis client, and the CEO of Morrison Tech stood up. Miss Thompson, Mr. Reid. He announced, his voice carrying across the room. I believe my company needs to reevaluate our relationship with Vertex immediately. He turned to address the crowd. Anyone who's been collaborating with these individuals on my account should plan to attend an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. That's when the professional consequences began cascading like dominoes. Ladies and gentlemen, I said into the microphone. One final time. Thank you for your attention. I hope this evening has been as educational for you as it has been for me. I set down the remote, straightened my tie, and walked toward the exit. As I passed, Jessica, still surrounded by the wreckage of her carefully constructed image, I paused. The divorce papers will be served Monday morning. I've already moved out. She grabbed my arm with desperate strength. Derek, please. You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Actually, it happened exactly like this. Only difference is that now everyone knows what you really are. Sarah intercepted me near the exit. Mr. Thompson, I believe our evening's just beginning. We left the Art Institute together, stepping into the cool Chicago air while chaos reigned behind us. Over coffee at an all-night diner, Sarah and I coordinated the next phase of our response. Nathan's been draining our joint accounts to fund his affair. Sarah revealed I discovered unauthorized transfers totaling over $80,000. He's been using our children's college funds to pay for hotels in that apartment. Jessica's been embezzling too. Miguel found evidence of expense account fraud going back months. Good. That makes the legal paperwork much simpler. The aftermath was swift and brutal. By Monday morning, both Jessica and Nathan were fired from Vertex. The corporate espionage evidence triggered investigations that destroyed any hope of starting their own agency. Morrison Tech immediately canceled their multi-million-dollar contract and threatened legal action. Over proprietary information breaches, Jessica's professional network evaporated virtually overnight. Chicago's advertising community was smaller than most people realized, and news of her double life spread through industry connections faster than social media. She found herself blacklisted from every reputable firm in the city. Nathan faced even worse consequences. The financial evidence Sarah and I had gathered revealed violations of his employment contract that triggered clawback provisions, forcing him to repay years of bonuses and stock options. His gambling debts, combined with legal fees and divorce settlements, left him financially ruined. My divorce proceedings were remarkably straightforward. Jessica had no leverage. Her affair was documented in high definition, and her professional misconduct made any claim to spousal support impossible. I kept our Lincoln Park condo, our savings accounts, and most importantly, my self-respect. Sarah's divorce was more complex due to shared custody issues, but she proved as precise in legal matters as she was in surgery. Nathan lost custody of their children, primary residence, and most of their assets. 3 months after the gala, I found myself in an unexpected position. Word of my attention to detail and strategic thinking had spread through Chicago's business community. Architectural firms approached me with offers. Impressed by someone who clearly understood corporate dynamics and information management, I accepted a position with Sterling and Associates, a prestigious firm specializing in commercial and cultural buildings. My first project, designing the new headquarters for Morrison Tech. I have to ask, Morrison said during my interview, what makes you think you'll excel in large-scale corporate architecture? Well, I replied, I just spent 12 years studying how organizations really function from the inside. I understand the importance of transparency, proper oversight, and making sure everyone knows exactly where they stand. He laughed heartily. Excellent perspective. When can you start 6 months later? I was living in a stunning loft downtown with panoramic views of Lake Michigan, working on projects that challenged and inspired me. I'd started dating again a fellow architect named Rebecca, who had her own successful practice and appreciated both honesty and independence. I ran into Miguel at a Bears game, sharing beers and watching autumn sunset paint Chicago's skyline. You know, he said, in all my years of investigation work, I've never seen a revenge plot work out so perfectly for the person who executed it. It wasn't about revenge, I protested. What would you call it? Then I thought about it as the crowd roared around us. Educational justice with excellent documentation and perfect timing. Sarah and I had remained close friends, bonded by our shared experience of public humiliation, transformed into private triumph. She'd started dating a colleague from the hospital who actually showed up for family dinners and remembered important dates. Do you ever regret the way we handled things? She asked during one of our monthly lunches. Which part? Discovering the truth or revealing it? The public exposure. We could have handled it quietly, saved ourselves the drama. I consider this while watching pedestrians hurry past on Michigan Avenue. Jessica and Nathan didn't just betray us privately. They humiliated us publicly for months. Every knowing smile from their colleagues, every inside joke we weren't part of. Every time someone asked about our busy spouses was another small humiliation. So we returned the favor in kind. We balanced the scales. They earned every consequence that followed. 1 year after the gala, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Jessica stood in my doorway, looking older and dramatically changed. The designer clothes had been replaced by discount business attire. Her salon-styled hair showed gray roots, and she carried herself with the defeated posture of someone who'd learned hard lessons about consequences. Hello, Derek, Jessica, this is unexpected. She studied my corner office, the architectural awards on the walls, the scale models of my current projects, the obvious markers of professional success and personal satisfaction. You've done incredibly well for yourself, thank you. Was there something specific you needed? I wanted to apologize for everything. For the affair, the lies, the way I treated you, like you were disposable. You deserve so much better than what I gave you. I leaned back in my chair, genuinely curious about this conversation. Why now? Jessica, I've had a year to think, to understand what I threw away. Her voice cracked slightly. I destroyed a 12-year marriage with a man who loved me unconditionally for someone who abandoned me the moment things got difficult, Nathan. Nathan blamed me for everything when we were fired. Say it, I was too careless, too obvious, like the entire affair was my fault alone. She wiped her eyes with a tissue that had seen better days. He moved to Portland last month. Didn't even say goodbye, and you're working where now? A small firm. In Neepville, half the salary I was making at Vertex, and I'm basically starting over as a junior account coordinator. She managed a bitter laugh. Turns out, reputation matters more than I realized. I stood and walked to my window, looking out at the city skyline where my latest project was taking shape. Jessica, I appreciate you coming here to apologize. I really do. But I need you to understand something important. What's that? I don't need your apology to move on with my life. I've already done that. What do you mean? For months after the gala, I waited for you to reach out to fight for what we had, to show some remorse for the devastation you'd caused. I thought, that's what I wanted. I turned back to face her. But you never called, never tried. You just dealt with the consequences while I rebuilt everything. I was ashamed. You were protecting yourself, just like you've been doing throughout the affair. I returned to my desk, suddenly tired of relitigating the past. The truth is, Jessica, you gave me an extraordinary gift, a gift. You showed me who I really am. For years, I'd been shrinking myself to accommodate your ambitions, making myself smaller so you could shine brighter. I convinced myself that support meant sacrifice, that love meant accepting whatever crumbs of attention you had left over Jessica. Stared at me, perhaps finally seeing the man she'd underestimated for so long. You freed me from a marriage where I was disappearing. I continued where I was becoming a supporting character in my own life. That night at the gala, I didn't just expose your affair, I reclaimed my own existence. So you feel nothing after 12 years together. I feel grateful. You taught me that I deserved better than what you were offering, and that knowledge was exactly what I needed to build something remarkable. I loved you, Derek. Maybe not the way I should have, but I did love you. No, Jessica, you loved the idea of me. The stable backup plan, who would be there when your other options didn't work out. That's not love, that's convenience. With emotional language attached. She was crying now, but I felt no satisfaction in her pain, only a profound sense of closure. I hope someday you can forgive me. I already have. But forgiveness doesn't mean welcoming you back into my life, or pretending the past didn't happen. It means I've stopped letting your choices define my future. Jessica left without another word, and I never saw her again. That evening, I met Rebecca Sarah and Tom Sarah's boyfriend for dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking Navy Pier. We sat outside under the stars, toasting to second chances and hard-won wisdom. You know what I've learned, Rebecca said, refilling our wine glasses. People spend so much energy protecting their image that they forget to build something authentically worth protecting. So Jessica was all image. Shaw and I agreed. Perfect career, perfect marriage, perfect reputation, but none of it was real. Sarah raised her glass. To choosing substance over appearance, to having the courage to demand honesty. Tom added to discovering that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you clears the way for the best things yet to come. I concluded, we toasted under Chicago's glittering skyline, celebrating not what had been lost, but what had been found. Jessica and Nathan had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible. They'd shown me my own strength. The tables hadn't just turned, they'd been completely redesigned and rebuilt. And the view from where I sat now was absolutely magnificent. Looking back, I realized that the real victory wasn't in destroying Jessica and Nathan's lives. It was in refusing to let them destroy mine. They'd thought I was the weak link in their perfect plan, the convenient obstacle to be managed, while they pursued their real happiness. They'd learned in the most public way possible that under E, stymiting someone is the first step toward losing everything you think you've already won. The best revenge, it turns out, isn't destroying your enemies, it's building a life so fulfilling that they become irrelevant to your happiness. And as I looked out over the city, I now saw his mind to explore. Rather than endure, I smiled.